Hello and welcome to the November mini tasting of the cheeses featured in the Cheese Ladies subscription box. We have 4 wonderful cheeses to try together, and I'd like to welcome my co-host Hollie today, who is going to, I'm sure, enjoy all of these cheeses with me. So let's start, and we have, like I say, 4 absolutely amazing farmhouse and artisan cheeses to try. For the first cheese, which is the soft cheese on our right hand side, we're going to France, and this cheese is called Délices de Crémier. And what I love about this cheese, what we all love about this cheese, is that it belongs to a special category of cheeses known as triple creams. So what triple creams are, essentially they're like brie, so you can see the bloomy rind on the outside, so that white edible rind. But inside the cheese is a little bit different to a brie or a camembert, and the difference is that during the cheese making process the milk is enriched with double cream, and that makes it extra luscious, extra rich, extra delicious. So we can see that this cheese, even though it's a soft cheese and you'll see that on your palate, it kind of keeps its shape. So it's butter-like or buttery. And it's glossy and wonderful. It's just already so inviting. We can have a little sniff.
Real mushroomy notes on the rind straight away. That classic bloomy rind.
Big mushroomy notes. But inside the paste is quite gentle. There isn't much aroma, but very gentle buttery kind of notes for me.
Yeah.
Maybe with a hint of sweetness.
And you can see straight away that distinct layer around the outer edge that looks much softer and stickier than the slightly firmer inner paste, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So yeah, what Hollie's talking about is this cream line. So what happens with these kinds of cheeses is that they are ripening from outside in, and the microbiological activity on the outside of the cheese, on the rind, is ripening the cheese. And that's why it breaks down. But you'll see inside the core is still a little bit firmer. It's not a firm texture, I just want to highlight, but it's a little bit of a contrast to the cream line. And that can tell us about the maturity, stage of maturity of this cheese.
So the more mature, the bigger that cream line will
Absolutely.
be. Yeah.
Soft cheeses are like that. They ripen from the outside in. And if you want your soft cheese to be as gooey, as creamy as possible, you want it to be fully ripe, you can ask your cheesemonger for advice and see what stage of ripeness your particular soft cheese you're buying is at. But with this one, Délices de Crémier will never be runny. I just want to completely stress that. It's a firm, kind of sturdy, but creamy soft cheese. And I just also wanted to mention the color. The rind is bloomy and white, and you can see the gentle kind of a touch of cream in the texture, so we can kind of guess that it's a cow's milk cheese if we didn't know. Yeah. And what are you finding on the palate?
Honestly, it's just like butter. It's so luxurious, so silky, so smooth, and just absolutely delicious.
You can just close your eyes and savor it and roll it around in your mouth. If some of you at home find this cheese maybe a little bit too rich, I do have a solution for that. You probably know where I'm going with this. The most delicious way to enjoy Délices de Crémier, I find, is with sparkling drinks. So if you have a special occasion, especially if you just want to have a little treat on a Friday or Saturday night, I think that's completely within reason. Get yourself a bottle of champagne, cava, or prosecco, and when you have the cheese in your palate, in your mouth, and add a little bit of bubbles with a zingy kind of acidity, the texture of the cheese kind of expands, so it becomes more moussey and just absolutely to die for. So have you had that experience, Hollie?
Of course, I have to say it's my #1 experience.
Yeah. And we like to repeat it as often as possible. So yes, give that a try at home. Délices de Crémier. And I don't think I said where it was from. It's from France, Burgundy in France. Love the French people for this kind of, for creating and inventing this style of cheese. Absolutely amazing. So for the second cheese, we are traveling to England and to Somerset specifically, and this cheese is called Rachel.
Yeah.
You've had Rachel before.
I have had
Yeah.
Rachel before, yeah.
Absolutely spectacular cheese. It's an award-winning cheese, won many awards, but the producer is just fantastic. What I love about Rachel is that it's goat's milk cheese, so we
Yeah.
can see in
Colour is the first giveaway, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. The snowy white, or how would you describe, maybe slightly bone white. Not quite as snowy as our rind on the Délice de Crémier, but you get the idea. So yes, absolutely, goat's milk here. But it is so wonderfully friendly, because I do see a lot of people at the shop who, when they hear goat's milk, immediately go, no, I don't like goat's milk.
Yeah. This is different though, isn't it?
Yes, so let's discover why this cheese is a little bit friendlier than the ones they're thinking about. And the key reason here is because Rachel is made like a Gouda.
Ah, okay.
You can actually see the shape. It almost reminds you of the Dutch Goudas. It's got rounded sides, but has a few differences. And what makes Goudas so friendly is their natural sweetness, and that's because of the way they're made. Goudas essentially are washed curd cheeses, and during the cheese making process, some of the whey gets removed and replaced with hot water that changes the pH, and the resulting cheese is a little bit sweeter. So that's what we have here with Rachel. And I also, I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the rind. It's quite distinct, isn't it? And
the rind is orange with specks of yellow. I don't know if you can see that at home, but it's fascinating. It's a beautiful rind, very striking. So it starts as a washed rind cheese, so they do wash the cheese on the outside, but then they stop the process, or maybe reduce the number of washings they do, and it dries out a little bit and becomes more of a natural rind, and grows these fascinating yellow molds, which are absolutely spectacular.
yes.
So, but if we smell it,
Yeah, the smell is quite distinct compared to the paste.
it's not unpleasant, but it's
No.
definitely more on the farmyardy side. Lovely. It's just like that borderline. It could, if it was stronger, it might go unpleasant, but this is very, very pleasant.
And would you describe that as kind of semi-firm? It's got a little bit of bounce to it, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if we press on the cheese and bounces back, we've got a semi-firm cheese here. We also have very tiny little eyes.
Yeah.
Tiny little eyes. You can see also pliable, so semi-firm. Let's break a bit off and smell the paste as well. I would say it's quite gentle.
Yeah.
So if we think of French goat's milk cheeses that are very, very farmyardy, this is not quite like that. It's not punchy, it's not farmyardy, very gentle. So if you're new to goat's milk cheeses, please do yourself a favor, start with something like a Gouda style, and you'll be on the right track. And what do you think about the taste?
I can instantly pick up that slight sweetness that you talked about from the Gouda style, but it is very gentle, very mellow. Dare I say, is there even some slight citrusy notes in there?
I think definitely prevalent notes are very nutty, almost caramelly. There's a very light bit of acidity, just to keep it nice on the palate. But I also love the texture. How smooth is that?
Extremely smooth, yeah. It's got a nice bite to it.
Yes. Without being an overwhelming flavor, it's not punching in your face. It's still very complex. And you see how lingering it is as well. And that's why I think it's just such an award winner.
What would you pair that one with?
I personally, if I had to pick one style of wine, I would say a gentle red, like a Pinot Noir.
Something quite light. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what would pair well with that.
Maybe an oaky Chardonnay. So white wines could be tricky here, like with a lot of acidity, and the sweetness might not mesh very well. But experiment at home, and it has to work for you. So do give it a try. I think some nice ales also, because they have the nutty, caramelly kind of thing going on. might work. So yes, don't stop yourself, don't confine yourself just like to one a wine that I suggested. Give it a try with something else. Did you want to add anything else about our Rachel? Do you think it's an award winner?
I think it's an award winner, and deservedly so. Absolutely, yeah. It's really elegant, as you said, and for people who might not be the biggest goat's cheese fans, I think it's a really good entry into that. It's quite different to traditional goat's cheese.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hope you're enjoying it. Now let's move on to our third cheese, and for this one we actually stay in England. But we're going to Lincolnshire, and I had the pleasure of visiting this producer very recently. So the cheese is called Lincolnshire Poacher. Very aptly named after the area, and there's a story, I'm sure, to that. I think this Lincolnshire Poacher was an actual real person.
Oh wow, okay.
Yes, and I met somebody who was related to them, so I don't know the entire story though, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. Lincolnshire Poacher is a raw cow's milk cheese with traditional rennet. Sorry, I should have mentioned this was vegetarian, and this is traditional rennet as well. We can see immediately in color.
Yes.
Golden. So cow's milk. Has a nice rind. I'm actually going to show you to the camera. See how nice and browned and speckled it is. It comes in a biggish truckle. I would say it's about 18 kilos.
Okay.
So if you think of a traditional cheddar in a big tall truckle, so it's similar. And matured, I think they mature their classic Lincolnshire Poacher for over a year. I'm not going to say exactly. I think it might be even closer to 18 months, but at least a year, and therefore develops this nice sturdy rind. They do actually use a little bit of plastico, which is a very, very fine layer of kind of waxy substance. So I wouldn't necessarily eat this rind. Okay. Yes, but because it's so fine, and if you eat it, it's not going to harm you unless you consume massive amounts of it.
So is it a classic cheddar, this one then, or something a little more to it?
Oh, I think there's something a little more to it, as we will discover when we taste it. So yes, it's made a little bit like a cheddar. It's put through a chip mill during the making process, so it kind of cuts up the curd. So when we taste it and when we look at the texture even more closely, we'll see that it's got a little bit of crumbliness to its texture, but also it's almost reminiscent to an Alpine cheese. So if you think like Emmentaler, Gruyere, things like that. Yeah. So
because the texture looks a little smoother than a traditional really crumbly cheddar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like a hybrid. That's what we want to say. It's a marriage of the two styles, a hybrid of the two styles, and that's why we like this Lincolnshire Poacher, because it's a little bit more unusual. So if you want to venture off the beaten cheddar track, this is where you can go next. A Lincolnshire Poacher. They also make Lincolnshire Poacher double barrel, which is more mature, kind of with even more oomph. And we've just received our first few truckles of Poacher 50, which maybe we'll explore at some later months. That is something real special. So have we smelled it yet? I find it quite fruity. There's like a nice sharp tang to it, and bright fruitiness, more than nuttiness for me. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we press on the texture here, it's noticeably firmer than Rachel. So semi-firm, firm cheese, and let's try it. And you can see when you break it, it's kind of rugged texture. So it's not an Alpine cheese, strictly speaking, which is more of a cleaner break. What do you think about the taste?
I'm getting real kind of earthy notes, first of all. That fruitiness that you could smell, there's definitely a bit of that in the taste as well. Just really savoury.
Yeah. I think I agree on the savoury. So we contrast that with the Rachel that we tried, which was super, super nutty and caramelly. This is very much clearly heading towards the cheddars, and it's got that sharpness and bite and character and savory. A lot less sweetness, but the sweetness is still there. And I love how elegantly salt just plays a very supporting role in the background. I love when the cheesemakers use salt appropriately and not overwhelmingly. So while it is there and we do need salt for cheese making, it's not the first thing that you taste. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely
Well
lovely.
balanced.
What should we be having it with?
Cheddar, classic cider, or
I like
an
that.
English ale,
Yep.
real ale, or something like that.
Yeah. I love that idea. English ale, red wine as well.
Red
I mean, cheddars are completely appropriate for red wines. And yes, I was going to mention our visit to this producer. What really fascinated me is that we were walking through their cheese making room and then seeing some cows. Unfortunately, we didn't see much cheese making that day because they had already finished. But then one of the brothers who run the farm and the cheese making took us to this other place, and I didn't know what to expect. He opened the door and we were in this cathedral of cheese.
Oh, wow.
They have 12,000 truckles of Lincolnshire poacher maturing there.
Oh my goodness.
So it was racks and shelves. So we tried some of their cheeses from the truckle, and we could see the difference when they're younger, and this is how they develop. And this was absolutely special. And then he took us to this other part of the cheese cathedral, as I want to call it. And this is where we tried the Poacher 50, which was their happy accident during the pandemic when they were trying to make as much cheese as possible, so just to preserve all of their milk, and accidentally heated the curd to 50 degrees.
I was going to ask you what the 50 represented. It's not been aged for 50 years.
No, but now, because we're in 2024 and the cheese was made in 2020, the chocolates that we received are 4 years plus.
Wow, I'm excited to try this.
Very excited. Now, let's move on to our final cheese. And as tradition would have it, we always finish with a blue. So, and now for the blue cheese, we're going back to France. So we have actually a Franco-English selection today. It wasn't completely intentional. I was just thinking of creating a nicely balanced cheese board, but that's what it ended up being. So Fourme d'Ambert, it's a classic of a blue cheese. So one of the name-protected, law-protected cheeses in France, super classic. And with that, I'd like to mention, and for you to keep in mind, that when cheeses are so popular, they can be made on a much larger scale. So for instance, for this cheese and for other French cheeses, there will be variations in scale that they're made at. So you will find Fourme d'Ambert made on an industrial scale, so mass kind of produced, if you will, or artisanally made. So there will be smaller producers. And of course, because here we specialize in farmhouse and artisan cheeses, our producer is the smaller artisan producer.
Yeah. So in other words, you might find another version in the supermarket.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, this is exactly where I was going with this. You, especially when you go to France, you will see Fourme d'Ambert being sold in supermarkets, and you'll be like, oh, why is it so much less expensive? And then you'll realize when you take it home that the flavor may be a little bit less complex.
Yeah, sure.
But yes, it will be reflected in the price. So texture-wise,
it looks quite, there's a certain firmness to it, but it looks really creamy, doesn't it?
yes. Well, it's not gooey.
No.
I'm sure we would agree on that. It keeps its shape.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a good cheese to serve at a party, I like this because this is not going to look like a puddle.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we can perceive that it's going to be creamy on the palate.
Definitely.
And we also want to probably agree and just highlight how evenly distributed the mold is throughout the paste. So some people may think that it will result in a stronger bite.
Yes.
On the palate, maybe not always so.
Okay.
But we can comment to that once we taste the cheese. And of course, there's like a touch of cream to the color of the paste itself because it's a cow's milk cheese, traditional rennet.
Yeah.
It's also got a natural rind.
Yes. A very thin rind as well.
Quite thin. It is quite moldy. It's up to you whether you want to eat it or not. I don't particularly find rinds on blues delicious myself, but you can try it, won't harm you. And I'm just gonna have a little sniff as well. And for me, it's a very strong mushroomy aroma.
I have to separate it from the biscuit because I was just getting biscuit notes. But
buttery.
Yeah.
And on the rind, it's probably gonna be, yes, a little bit more earthy. So have a sniff. Let's taste it.
It is really creamy. It has that slight bite to it. But to your point earlier, whilst there's lots of veining through it, I would probably say it's relatively mild verging on medium strength. It's not an overpoweringly strong blue cheese.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I mean, it depends on what you're used to in terms of blue bite on your palate. But yes, if I were to arrange all of our blues from mild to medium, it would sit like not at the very bottom of the mild, but kind of edging towards the medium, somewhere there. And it does have quite a noticeable amount of salt. But that's completely normal for blue cheeses. Blue mold gives them that saltier character, saltier edge. And therefore, when we start thinking about having it with wine or other beverages, we want to go a bit sweeter.
Yes.
We want to go with either like a richer red wine, some like ripasso, passito type of wine from Italy.
Would you do a sweet white wine with that?
Not necessarily, because I think not so much, but I haven't tried it. Are you thinking like a Sauterne? Yeah,
or like a sweet Riesling.
Perhaps. Give it a try at home.
Possibly,
yes, yeah. I'm just wondering about that mushroomy note, whether it would go with the white. But it's worth experimenting. There's no cheese police, remember? You're not going to be breaking any rules and any laws there. Absolutely give it a try. Do you have any favorites today, Hollie?
I have a favorite today, but I also have one of my all-time favorites, which is the Delice de Crémy. Not least because we have to eat it with champagne.
Absolutely, I love that. Well, I agree that all cheeses are amazing, and I love Rachel, and I love all the other cheeses. Delice de Crémy just has that little special spot.
It's luxe, isn't it?
It is luxe. So just bear that in mind for Christmas time. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Hollie, for joining me and enjoying these cheeses with me. We do hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below, and we do hope to see you next time.